homework. So we're going to do a quick review. We'll do a quick review on some of the ideas because there are people who weren't here, and so and there are people who weren't here last week, and we'll do this, a 15-minute review. We'll go over some tagilim together, some of the, some ideas, some of your homework, and then we'll move forward. We're going to move forward a little bit more. We're going to work today a little bit with Molad. Hopefully, my plan is that by the end of tonight, we'll be done with Molad. And by the following week, we'll move to holidays or Chodesh and things like that to know how to use the Molad. Right now, I'm really teaching you Molad as a basic. You don't really know how to use the Molad yet. Hopefully, by next week, we'll start learning how to actually use the Molad. Okay? So, again, there were some key components to the basics. Okay? The first basic point that we'll remember Kat Yeb Tashsag, or as we know, 29 days. Big D. We use big D for a reason. 29 days, 12 hours, and 793 halakim. Who remembers what this is?
For the full 1 month.
This is a little different than Ib Tashsag. This is the full mean cycle of the moon. Not the actual cycle of the moon, but the mean cycle of the moon. What's the difference between the mean, memutza, cycle and the actual cycle? Is that, as we mentioned, the moon itself, because the moon is a moving body that goes around another moving body, so the cycle fluctuates. The moon cycle fluctuates from month to month. There are times where it takes a shorter time to make its cycle, and there are times where it's a longer cycle. That actual cycle, if you remember, was used when? During the time of the Beit HaMikdash, when the Hachamim had to know actually exactly when the Edim could come. So that actual cycle was used. The Hachamim would actually make that actual cycle to figure out the entire exactly when new moon would be month by month. They have to know exactly. That cycle takes Rambam 7 chapters, and it took the Greeks full textbooks just to figure that out. They needed to evaluate many different equations till they got to that final equation. We, today, take what's called an average cycle. And we assume that this cycle, if you take many months of actual cycles, if we assume that this would be what we call the mean cycle, the average cycle after a while. As I told you, it's pretty accurate within seconds per month. Okay? We'll get back to this point probably next week, the difference between a mean cycle and an average cycle, and the actual cycle. But this is the amount of time that the moon makes its rotation around the Earth and gets back to the exact same point where it was vis-a-vis the sun. I mentioned to you last time that it's not 360 degrees cycle. It's about a 390 degree cycle. If you remember why, it's because as the moon moves around in the month, the sun and the earth have altered positions vis-a-vis each other approximately 30 degrees. So the moon needs to go back and be realigned to its position vis-a-vis the sun. Again, so it's like this. And again, I'm going to make a moving sun. I'm going to make a stationary earth and a moving sun. Again, I apologize for that, but it just makes it easier. I know the earth moves in the sun stationary. If here is the earth, here is the sun. If the moon begins here and goes around 4 quarters, till you get to conjunction again, which is till you get to absolute no moon, it goes about here. Why? Because the sun which moves slower than the moon, right? The moon makes a rotation once a month. The sun makes its rotation once a year. In the 30 days or so, 29 days, it's moved basically a degree or a little less. So it needed, this would take 27 and a half days. It needs to go a little bit more to catch up to where the sun has moved. And again, when we say quarters, even though we like to think here would be 1 quarter, here would be, we'd have to split it up in terms of 390 degrees or 385 degrees rather than 360 degrees. That really won't be relevant to here. It's not. I just want that's only for your knowledge. In fact, Rabbi Meir in Sutton writes a 360 degree. In Hagahot, in another book, is where he actually corrects himself on that. So you see that it's not so relevant, but I wanted to mention that. So this Katyab Tashsag, and I know some of you have been getting nervous from the way we say it. These are just, believe me, even though it sounds funny, it's easier to remember it this way. It's easier to remember Katyab Tashsag than 70, 20 days, 29 days, 12 hours, even though numbers are easier for you. It's just mnemonics. Therefore, all those things you heard last time, you're probably already remembering it. So this is the amount of time between one conjunction, one molad, to the next molad. That's what this is. If you have molad A, molad of the next month, right? And again, what is molad? What is molad? Guys.
Conjunction?
Well, yeah, which is?
New moon.
Which is the time that the moon disappears. Why does the moon disappear?
Lining up of everything?
Because the enlightened part faces space. And in other words, it's almost like a mini monthly eclipse where the part where the moon that's enlightened is totally facing space. And that's all that quarters of the month the moon are, is the part of the moon that is facing us that's enlightened.
So at most you're only seeing half a moon.
You're always, when you see full moon, you're seeing half the moon. You always, at every point in the month, half the moon is facing Earth. Exactly. The only thing is how much of that half is enlightened. When half of the moon that faces you is enlightened, that looks like half moon. Okay? That's all.
Me and Twin and I were trying to figure out if they could do it only based on what they saw when they did it up here, they did it so they saw it right after it was actually
right.
the moon.
So that's another thing I mentioned. We today concern ourselves with molad at conjunction. They didn't concern themselves with no moon.
They were wrong.
They too concerned with themselves with sliver moon. When you're dealing with a cycle, you can start at any point.
Aren't they late?
It's not late. It's not late at all. In other words, if it's take a circle. You start at any point in the circle, it gets the same amount of time till the next circle. So the question is, their month and our month started a little off. It might have been a day later. Their month, their cycle, was from sliver of moon to sliver of moon. Our cycle is from no moon to no moon.
We could be keeping the wrong Kippur then.
But this is the point. The Hiddush was, the Torah said, because, right, look at this, and you do a Kaddish, Kazera Eva Kaddish. We, who are not operating based on Re'iyah, therefore,
we're the wrong.
well, in a sense, but the only point, the point that we can, the only way we can accurately track this is by starting at no moon. In other words, mathematically, that becomes the easiest way to track it. So therefore, we begin our months at what we call Molad. But we don't you know what, let me stop. I should back up. You're getting me into Rosh Chodesh. I don't want to get into how we're going to make Rosh Chodesh, because that's get a little bit more complicated. Right now, let's just focus on what this Molad is. So therefore, Katyab Tashsag is the thing. Now, when I do Katyab Tashsag, when I want to figure out, you have Molad of Tishrei, and I want to know when the Molad of Heshvan is going to do it. So I know I add Katyab Tashsag to the last Molad, right? I add 29 days. But I don't care about the full weeks, right? Because I'm just adding, I know the week that we're in. So all I really want to know is the day, or the amount of days in the week that this Molad is advancing past last Molad. So therefore, the first rule is to knock out the sevens. Right? Shevi'it tishmetena untashta. Throw out the sevens. So therefore, if I throw out the sevens, that leaves me